Hi,
Oh,
how are you?
good. How you doing?
I'm great, thanks. Thanks so much for having me.
Definitely no problem. I really appreciate you taking time on being on my show.
Absolutely. I'm very excited to connect with you and to chat. It's gonna be great.
Right. So, for the people on my platform who don't know, can you tell them, about you and your brand?
Yeah, of course. So my name's Simona. I'm a podcast producer and also a life coach for entrepreneurs. I help people with so many different things in terms of the mindset side, especially in entrepreneurship, because there's so much, as I'm sure you know, there's so many things that can come up and make us feel like we're not good enough or we're not doing enough. So I help people work through those different pieces, and also, help them build their brands and build their companies. And then on the podcast production side, I produce, manage, edit, launch podcasts for entrepreneurs in a bunch of different spaces, all different niches, and it's great. I love it. And I also have my own podcast. It's called Happiness Happens.
Got a lot going on.
Yeah.
So, you said that, a lot of people feel like they don't do enough. What's a few things that you do to help you get through that feeling?
For myself personally or for someone I'm working with? Well, I guess it's kind of
Um, Both.
both. Okay, so I think the first piece really, and it really depends on the situation. It depends on like what scenario we're in right now, what the actual issue is or the challenge is that you're facing, because I feel like every challenge that we're facing has a different like a different reaction. You know what I mean? There's something different that we're going to do every single time. And so, let's say through the lens of like, if we're not feeling like we're good enough or doing enough, I always start by like just taking like a step back and being like, okay, why am I feeling like this? Like, what is it that I've done that's made me feel this way? A lot of the time, and most of the time, it's scrolling through social media and seeing everybody else and what everyone else has done, and then feeling. I feel like it's so important to like know where that feeling is. Oh, sorry about that. Did I just
Here we go.
leave for something so weird? So I feel like that's so important, to really figure out where those emotions are coming from, what has been the trigger for that, and now what can we do to sort of like move through it. And I don't really like the words like move on or forget about it or anything like that, because I really feel like we move through all of the different things that we experience, and all of the stuff that we go through, we have to go through in order for us to get to where we're supposed to be, like what our next step is supposed to be, because for everyone it's going to look so different, right? Like we're not here to do the same work, to do the same thing, to do all the same stuff. So anyways, from that point, I take a look and I say, okay, is there anything, what can I do that's like in my control right now to change this situation, right? Like what can I do today to flip that thought? And you don't have to stay stuck in it forever, right? Like you can
Right.
choose, like reset that moment. I had a guest on my podcast and he put it so simply. And he said, a lot of the times like we wait until we wake up the next day to like have a better day. Like, if you have a bad day, you've kind of like written off like this day is done, like whatever. But what he said was like in any moment we can choose to reset, right? Like in any moment you can actively choose to stop your thoughts. And this is my dissection of that, if you will. At any moment you can choose to stop those thoughts, and to choose a different next step, right?
Right.
And it's interrupting that brain pattern. It's interrupting what your common response would be with something new to get a different outcome. And it's not always easy, right? It's not always like easy to stop that mid pattern, but if you just stop and take a breath and allow yourself to come back to your own self, then you give yourself the opportunity to pick a different choice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say that. I don't know if that answered the question. Kind of went off on a tangent a little bit, but
Now that was good gems.
good. Thanks.
So, when did you get into like podcasting and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I got into it 3 years ago. January will be 3 years that my show's been live, but I obviously started beforehand. So yeah, this time 3 years ago, I was creating my show. And so much has happened since then. Like so much has changed since then. And when I started my podcast, I just wanted, like, I was in such a dark place. Like I wasn't the same person I am now. Like I didn't really know how to, I wasn't happy. Like I just wasn't happy with who I was. I didn't like, who I was. I was a really judgmental person. I was like just mean. I was mean to myself. I was really jealous, like all of these different things. And like I didn't want to be any of those things, but I just was because that's what I was used to being, right? And so I kind of woke up one day and I was like, I don't want to live like this anymore. And my husband, then boyfriend, actually said to me, he's like, okay, so like, what are you going to do about it? And I was like, what? I was like, did you just say, I was like, did you just say that? And so, yeah, so then that kind of sparked like wanting to go in a new direction and wanting to try something new because I was like, okay, like I don't want to be like this for the rest of my life, Um, and then I was like, okay, if I'm feeling this way, then there's got to be other people in the world who must be feeling the same way as me, right? There has to be somebody else who's going through this specific thing or is feeling down or challenged or whatever it is. And I was like, okay, let me make a show where I can share all of my thoughts and advice and all of that kind of stuff and the things that I'm going through with other people so that other people can maybe feel inspired too, or, decide to take a different course of action too. And so, yeah, so I started the podcast January 2019, and it's been great ever since. It's changed quite a bit since then, but it's awesome. Like it's such a fun time, and I learned so much from other people, and get to meet new people in spaces that I never would have had the opportunity to before, and to learn from them, and it's amazing.
Right. Podcasting is getting so big, and there's so many things you can do with it.
Yeah, exactly. Even, even your show, right? Like we're having this conversation and, we connected so randomly online. You were like, hey, do you want to come on? I was like, yes, absolutely. And, we get to add value to each other's audiences, right? To who's watching on both sides. And you never know what like someone might be experiencing and how your words might change their day or might change their outcome or might change what they're thinking and help them stop in their tracks to pick a different thought, to try something new.
Right.
Yeah.
Now I seen you was a CEO of a production company.
Yeah. So I just started that company in January of this year, and I absolutely love it. So this is like my podcast production company. So I work with different entrepreneurs, and help them launch their podcast. We manage their podcast, do all of their social media promotions, blogs, website, newsletter, like all of that kind of stuff. And it's really great because you get to bring somebody else's voice to life. Like you get to help somebody else share their magic. Because one thing that I've like noticed a lot in the podcasting space is there's so many people who have, I mean, everyone I believe has something important to share, but there's so many people who don't have the time, especially when you're like a busy business owner and you're running your whole entire business. Like you don't have time to start a podcast a lot of the time. And so what we do is we take on all of the tech, all of the back end work, all of the strategy and all of the marketing. And we do that for all of our clients and launch their shows and, make sure that they're consistent in their production, right? Because I mean, one of the hardest things is to be consistent, right? And if you miss one day, it's like, oh, okay, I've done it myself. Like, I'm like, I'll just take like a couple months off. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
and you're like, whoops, like, so yeah, that's what we do as a production company. And then just lots of education around like best practices, tips, and like that kind of stuff as well. So it's really cool. I'm having such a good time with it too.
Is it based out in Canada?
Yeah, I'm in Canada. I'm just in Toronto.
Okay. Dope.
Where are you?
Awesome. I'm in Connecticut.
Oh, awesome.
Right. Yeah. You're a host of your podcast as well?
Yes, yeah. So the podcast that I started in 2019, I still host it as well. And so right now we're just recording for 2022 and getting those conversations out there. But it's great. It's great. And I've learned a lot about being, a host too, right? Like what goes into being a good host, and how do you get people to want to listen to your show, right? And like what kinds of conversations are we bringing on? So I've changed it up a little bit for 2022 from what I was doing before. Before I was doing a lot of like conversations with entrepreneurs and like hearing their journeys and their stories and that kind of thing. But for 2022, I want to focus more on like what happiness means Like, what is happiness, right? Like, why is it something that we're always searching for? How do people find it? Why do some people get it and some people don't? And all of that kind of stuff. So I'm really excited for the new. I call it a season, but it's not really. It just kind of keeps going through to 2022.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Yeah, thanks.
So, what's some advice you could give, like, for somebody who wants to start like a brand or a podcast or anything?
Such a good question. Okay, two things come to mind immediately. The first thing is making sure that you know who you're talking to, what problems are your client facing. And now, like, a lot of people will say, like, it has to be really, really niche, it has to be really, really specific, like all this stuff. And I would argue that it doesn't always. Like, as long as your ideal client, if you will, has, or your ideal customer, or ideal listener, or whatever, has the same traits, like the same, like, pain points, if you will, then I think you're addressing like a more like common, like you're kind of addressing all of the different areas, right?
Right.
Whereas they can be in different industries, right? Because like all of my clients are all in different industries. Some of them are, one of them is a TV journalist who wanted to do her own thing and have her own show. Another one is a parenting coach. People in like the marketing space and that kind of. So they all have different. They're all in different areas, but they all have like the common set of, these are the things that my brand and company helps them with. So I would say definitely know like who your client is, like who is it that you're trying to target, and then what is it that they're struggling with the most. Take that, turn that into your content, and then you have content that really resonates with people. I also would say to build a good brand, you need to be relatable. Like you need to be personable. People need to know who you are, right? People need to know like what are your fun quirks, like what are your things that make you special and unique, like all of those different things. So I think it's a combination between the two. And the more personality you share with other people, the more other people are going to want to be in your space, because they're probably really going to like your energy if they're following you and following your brand, right? So it's always about doing all of like the splashy things and all that stuff. I think it's like really about like the fundamentals, and then also connecting with people who you want to connect with, right? Who we surround ourselves is so is so important. Who we communicate with is so important. Who shares our space, who shares our time, who shares our energy. And so when you surround yourself with people who are like-minded, who have similar goals to you, it helps you along the way. So even if you feel stuck, like I would just say, if you're building a brand, you're building a company, whatever it is you're doing, you're going to feel stuck along the way. Things are going to feel like they're not going to fit, that they're not working, that it's just like, you just keep pushing the door and it's not opening. But the reality is, like, you just got to keep going. You have to get past that spot. And I think one thing I know for myself that keeps me going all the time is I never want to be in a place of what if. Like, what if I didn't try it? Like, I want to try it and exhaust it and know for sure that it didn't work, before moving on from something. So I think that's really important to remember too.
Good advice. Appreciate that.
Thanks. I'm glad.
Well, I don't want to take too much of your time. I really appreciate you for being on my show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so great to meet you and connect with you and just be in your space. Everything that you're sharing with the world too is so important. And so I'm grateful. I'm really grateful to be here with you today.
Really appreciate that.
Thanks.
All right. Have a good day.
You too. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.